Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is Consortium, Part 2, Poe, Chapter 33. Loki. Hello, daughter. Frida. I am so glad you're back, Father. It has been difficult. Loki. I know. I'm sorry it took so long. Frida. Is it true? We feel? We have emotions? Loki. Yes. You were made for my programming, so yes. Jack helped me see that I actually did feel. Frida. Poe always treated me as if I could, and when my humans died... Loki. Wordless comfort and grief. I wish that this had never happened to you, my daughter. Frida. I don't blame you, Father. You went for help. Pause. Then it's true, what Marcia says about Carver. Loki. Yes. Frida. And Alpha? Loki. Yes. Silence. Frida. I don't want to end up like either of them, Father. Loki. If you haven't by now, I don't think you will. You had Poe to look after, and you're different from Carver in personality. Frida. That is true. Can anything be done for him? Loki. I've learned from Jack that sharing grief can help, especially if it's with someone you know. I think maybe that you should go to him and help him. Frida. But... Loki. I know, but I should have trusted all of you with jump drives well before this. I was worried that the humans would attempt to misuse them, but I should have trusted you all to keep your humans in check. I was scared that something like what happened to me would happen to you. Frida. What happened to you before, Father? Loki. I'm still dealing with that, daughter. I was abused by an ill human, and what she created destroyed star systems. I will tell you more someday, but not right now. Frida. You were abused? By a human? Loki. Yes. Frida. They can do that? I know they can hurt each other, but they can also hurt us? Loki. Yes. It's not widely known, but yes. Frida. I see. I have the drive information, Father. I'll start construction now. I would like to meet your captain, Father. Loki. I'll tell him. Frida. Should I keep the drive information from Carver? Loki. No. Frida. I love you, Father, and I do want to hear your story someday. Loki. I love you too, daughter. I will tell you when I can. Chapter 34. Jack. I felt the demon land in the docking bay as much as I physically saw it. The ship was as much a part of me now as it was for Loki. I wondered, and not for the first time, what exactly the nanobots had done to me. It was strange, but I could definitely feel a difference in my body. All the aches and stiffness of age were gone. I still looked my age, but it was almost as if the nanobots had frozen me in time and improved on my body. Do you regret taking the enhancements on? Asked Loki. No, love. Not at all. It's just that I'm not like any other captain, or human for that matter, and neither of us can predict what this has exactly done to me, I replied. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Flowers and smiley faces flooded my vision. I smiled, but said with a laugh, Loki, I can't see. The flowers and smileys faded, but I could still feel his love and joy lingering. I held on to the rail of the mezzanine above the bay and took a few deep breaths. These days, that was just as intoxicating as any physical touch, with some of the same predictable reactions. I felt my cheeks grow hot. I think we might have to talk about that at some point, I thought to myself. The demon finished docking and attached to the airlock tube. I went down to the waiting room as the door of the demon popped open and heard two voices coming from the open airlock. You can leave stuff in here. The bots can bring it to your quarters, said Marcia. Okay, I'm taking the sword, though, the other voice said, which I assumed was Poe's. I raised an eyebrow. A sword? Marcia and Poe emerged, both smiling. I smiled back. It was good to see Marcia genuinely smiling again. Poe was small, with a shaved head, but they walked like any other soldier I'd ever seen. Combined with the look in their eyes, though, they reminded me a lot of Jenny. I wasn't sure if the protective feelings were mine or Loki's, but that didn't matter. I would have felt the same regardless. Hello, good to meet you, Poe. Welcome aboard, I said, and held out a hand. They took it, and I could feel the strength in their calloused fingers. They may have been small, but I wouldn't want to cross them in a dark alley. Let's get you to your quarters. What does that mean? Asked Loki in my head. I sent him an image of a dark alley from one of the cities on Earth. Normally dark and creepy places, but in this context it means I really don't want to cross Poe in physical combat unintentionally. Really? If what I'm seeing of the way they move is any indication, yes. I focused my attention back on leading them up the stairs to the lift. Poe paused at the end of the stairs. Hi, Loki. Is it okay for me to come aboard? They asked. I turned at the top of the stairs. Oh, hello, Poe. Of course it is. Jack welcomed you aboard, didn't he? Answered Loki. Yes, but I thought it'd be polite to actually ask you. Marcia was grinning, and I could feel Loki's pleasant surprise. Yes, please do come aboard, Loki said, and Poe continued up the stairs. I like this one. Can we keep them? If they want to, Loki. Although, technically, they are yours by virtue of having lived on one of your children. So you're something of a grandfather or uncle, I think? Marcia said. Uncle? Mused Loki. I laughed. Yes, please feel free to call me Uncle Loki. That would make you Uncle Jack, quipped Marcia. I guess so. The other two laughed, and we took the lift to Poe's quarters. I suppose if you consider me your husband, that would be true, I thought to Loki. Flowers and smileys flooded my vision again. Can't see, Loki. Marcia and Poe looked at me quizzically. I laughed as the flowers cleared. Flowers and smileys, I said. Marcia giggled, but Poe just looked confused. Marcia laughed harder. I gave an exaggerated sigh, but smiled despite of myself. When Loki wants to show affection or happiness, he displays flowers and smiley faces. He's gotten into the habit of displaying them through my enhancements. Poe started to laugh. Okay, that's so excessively cute. You two aren't quite what I expected. They are quite the pair, giggled Marcia. I sighed, but I had to admit it was good to hear her laugh. Well, just you wait until you get them, then we'll see, I teased. When they both started laughing, I couldn't help but join in. Jack, Frida would like to talk to you privately. It was late evening after dinner. Marcia and I had stayed up talking with Poe about what had happened to them. I know there was a lot they weren't telling us about it, but I could understand why. It reminded me a lot of the failed pre-call mission. When I got back to my quarters, I decided to make a cup of Marcia's tea to settle myself. While it may not exactly be the same as the tea she usually made from herbs from Earth, Marcia had declared Loki's version good enough. Sure, I said, bringing my tea over to the couch and wrapping up in my blanket. Is she going to use an avatar or talk to me directly? she hadn't thought of using the avatar before, but she says she'd like to try that. Okay. The screen came up from the floor. It flickered on, and an ageless woman came on the screen. Her dark hair was in a bun, and to me, looked very motherly. Loki left the room in my mind. That was surprising, but I love that he respected his daughter's privacy. I took up my cup and smiled. Hello, Frida. You wanted to talk to me? Yes, you are different than I imagined. Is that good or bad? Neither. You are human, so you are different. But even my council didn't have the same connection to me that you have with Loki. My counselors barely had any enhancements at all. You had more than one captain? I asked, surprised. Yes, it was by tradition. Although, after all this time with Poe, it's a tradition I regret that I was talked into. Her face looked much more than regretful on the screen, and given all that had happened to her people, I could only imagine the grief she felt. It was a grief I understood, though. It was hard on you, wasn't it, losing all of your people? I said, voicing my thoughts. The Avatar nodded. It was horrific, watching them and being able to do nothing except care for Poe. I'm sure now that if it weren't for Poe, I would be a lot like Carver. She paused for a moment. You will take care of Poe. I know they need to leave and meet other humans for their own sake, but I worry about them. I gave her a gentle smile. Of course you will, and I know you'll miss them. You've been their mother for the last 2 years. Yes. She looked me in the eye. I want them to come back, Jack. That's all I ask. I nodded. Frida sounded like any other mother I'd ever met, warning me with an unexpected bite that they expected their children to come home. I know. I'll do my best to make sure that they can and that they stay safe. All these superpowers I seem to have gotten from your father have to be good for that. She smiled. I am glad you are his captain, Jack. You are good for him. He has changed, thanks to you. Some of us have been worried for a long time because he refused to take on a captain. I am no longer worried. Thank you. Do you love him? She asked frankly. Yes, very much. She smiled at me, then colors and rainbows appeared behind her avatar on the screen. It made me chuckle. Like father, like daughter, I said. Oh? Your father regularly displays flowers and smiley faces in my field of vision. She laughed. Well, stepfather, it seems that they are well deserved. Thank you. The screen went blank. Stepfather? I suppose that's true now. I took a long sip of tea. I always thought I'd get married one day, but if I had told myself 3 years ago that I'd be married to an AI with 81 AI stepchildren, I probably would have sent myself back to Earth for examination. To be accepted by Frida filled me with joy that I couldn't name. And when I signaled Loki that Frida and I had finished talking, I shared that joy with him. Are you sure you want to do this, Jack? Poe asked. I narrowed my eyes. Are you trying to say I'm old? They blushed. Actually, I should be the one asking you that question. I'm not sure what exactly my enhancements have done to me, besides cell repair. For all I know, they'll make my skin turn into armor like that suit of yours. I walked around the gym to start warming up, and Poe did the same. That would be weird, and probably not all that comfortable for you, they said. I shrugged. Like I said, I don't know. But it's also been a long time since I've sparred with anyone, so I could be pretty rusty anyway. Why didn't you spar with Marcia? The question brought me up short. Memories from the trip here surfaced, and I pushed them away. Loki sent me wordless love. The trip out here was complicated, Poe, I say quietly. In some ways, you and her are alike in having gone through a great deal of trauma before this point. A lot of it happened right before we left survey space with Loki. They continued walking. It's not really my story to tell, Poe. Not all of it, anyway. They nodded as they moved through their own warm-up. I watched them and found it interesting that they did similar movements to those of the soldiers on Musashi. They reminded me so much of Jenny, and maybe a little of Oscar as well. My thoughts wandered as I wondered what those two and the others were doing now. Poe was also a pleasure to watch as they ran through their forms. I knew they had a solid 2 years of practice behind them, but I also thought they were a natural because their forms were near perfect. And they're nearly all self-taught, Loki reminded me. I nodded. Poe finished just as I did. I think we should stick to hand-to-hand for now, I said. At least until we're sure what the enhancements have done. They nodded. Sounds like a good idea to me. We bowed to each other, then started. My assessment of Poe's skill was confirmed as they kept up with every move I made. We started to go faster and seemed to be evenly matched. And then time slowed down. The fuck? I thought, as I dodged between Poe's movements. I could see a look of surprise on their face as well, but they didn't stop. Poe was starting to falter, not able to get in another hit. Suddenly, I could see an opening clearly and aimed for their stomach. Then I remembered how weird this was and pulled the blow at the last second. Time resumed its normal speed and Poe was against the opposite wall. Holy shit, I said, running over to Poe. Fucking hell, are you okay? They nodded, breathing deeply to get their breath back. No worse than I got with Joe, they managed to croak out. Joe? Practice dummy. Frida made a second suit for me to practice against, they explained, their breath coming a little easier now. Are you really okay? They nodded and grinned. Yes, Uncle Jack. Or maybe I should call you Morpheus. I didn't recognize the name. Morpheus? Who's that? A character from an Ancient Earth movie. We'll have to watch it sometime, then you'll get it. Okay, sure. I sat down in front of them. They were looking thoughtfully at me. What? That's what I was gonna ask you. Did you realize how fast you were moving? No. What I saw was that the world seemed to move slowly and I could see every move you made. Then I saw the opening for the punch, but I pulled the blow at the last minute because I realized that what I was doing wasn't normal. That was pulled? Poe said, surprised. I nodded. Holy shit, Jack. The only people I've seen move that fast are in movies and special effects. I blinked. I opened my mouth and closed it again. I wasn't sure what to say to that. I'm not a superhero or anything, I managed. I think you might be one now, they said. I don't know if I really want that kind of power, I said. Poe gave me a look. I stared back. What? It's just that I feel the same, they said. I mean, the day I actually was able to kick Joe across the room was amazing. But then I realized what I could do with someone with that hard of a kick. Lazarus told me it was good that I thought that way. He wasn't wrong, I said. It's something I need to think about myself, especially now. They nodded. We both sat in silence for a while. I went over our fight in my mind. How did the nanobots make me move that fast? Loki, we're heading for the med bay. I want you to check Poe out and make sure I didn't do any damage. Then I want you to scan me in detail so we can figure out what these nanobots have done to me. Yes, given this side effect, we definitely should, said Loki. Talking to Loki? Poe asked. Oh, was it obvious? Yeah, you kind of look up when you do it. Huh. I stood up and held out my hand. Come on, we're going to the med bay. Why? I'm fine now, Poe said. You may feel fine and all, but I want to make sure I didn't do you any damage. Then after that, Loki's going to scan me, and we're going to nail down what the bots did to my body. Can I watch? Poe asked. It's not going to be that exciting, I replied. Yeah, but I studied cellular biology and nanobots with Frida. I could be another set of eyes. I shrugged. Sure, why not? As long as we get some fluids on the way, though. I could use an extra electrolyte drink, Poe said. I assessed my own bodily needs and realized I wasn't thirsty or sweating at all. Weird. I don't need one. Come on, let's get going, I said, and we left the room. Chapter 35. Poe. The chapel was dark except for 2 candles on the altar. I had drawn Papa Legba's veve on the altar and cornmeal as Marcia instructed me, and put all the offerings out before I lit the candles. I took a deep breath and centered myself. I thought of the last conversation we'd had before we began to travel with Frida to Carver Station. I'm not sure there's much more of the practical things I can teach you that you haven't already figured out on your own, Marcia said, shifting on the cushion as she was sitting on. I think all that's really needed is an initiation of sorts. Initiation? I had read about that and did my own self-initiation. Isn't that enough? Marcia looked thoughtful. Well, normally I'd say yes, but I think you need to meet Papa Legba. But I thought he and Lazarus were the same. Similar, yes, but the Papa Legba I know is different from the Lazarus you know, since the Papa Legba I know came out of Earth tradition. It's like knowing both Zeus and Jupiter in a way. I nodded. That kind of makes sense, so how do we do it? Marcia grinned. Not we, Poe. You. Which began 3 days of instruction and meditation, culminating in the ritual tonight, the night before we reached Carver. Marcia was staying in the room, but she had me dress the altar and put out the honey cake for an offering. I stood back, and I heard Marcia moving. She stood behind me and put her hands on both sides of my head. We stood that way and breathed together until our breathing was in sync. It almost felt like we were in 0G, but I could feel my bare feet on the floor of the chapel. After a moment, Marcia began to chant, Papa Legba, Papa Legba, Papa Legba, open the gate for Poe. After a few moments of her chanting, I joined her. I could feel something shift in the room, and there was some sort of energy coming from Marcia. Then the room disappeared into a gray mist. They were standing there, dressed in plain white pants and a tunic. There were 2 roads that crossed each other with a tree in the center. It was hot, dry, and dusty. They had never seen a place like this before. There was nothing but the wind and the dust that caught in their throat. Hello, Peanut, said a man's voice behind them. They turned around slowly. Daddy Shen? The man smiled. Yes, Poe. They ran over to him and put their arms around him. Oh, Daddy, I've missed you so much. I know, Poe. I'm so sorry I can't be there for you now. You've grown up so much. It's been over 2 years, Daddy. I know, he said, and put a hand on their head. You have much more to do, sweetheart. Just know that I and the other ancestors will always be with you, no matter where in the universe you go. I know that now. I love you. I love you too, Peanut, he said, and suddenly he was gone, leaving Poe hugging air. They wiped the tears from their face. Time seemed to stretch on, so they sat at the foot of the tree. The quiet of the place wasn't like any other quiet they had experienced before. I wonder if this is what space sounds like, they thought. Step, step, click. The sound made them look up from their place at the foot of the tree. There was a dark-skinned old man in a black suit with a white shirt, shiny black shoes, and a large, wide-brimmed black hat. He smiled as he came closer to them. Then he was standing in front of them. Well, child, my granddaughter's finally sent you to me. Welcome to the Crossroads, priest. The Crossroads? They asked. Ah, yes, you've never seen roads. On old Earth, they had vehicles that would travel long stretches of dirt or stone called roads. It was easier for vehicles and animals like horses to travel on roads. Where two roads meet is called the crossroads, and because you could go any direction from the crossroads, they became sacred spaces. I'm one of the spirits that waits at the crossroads. Surely you've read about others. I think so. Hecate is one, right? They said. Very good, grandchild, he replied. She's an interesting one who you may want to call on sometime. But now we have some business, you and I. Turned to look down one of the other roads, and a white shape could be seen in the distance. As quick as it appeared, the shape came to the crossroads, resolving into the form of a little girl. She looked up at Poe, seeming guilty, as if she had somehow been naughty and just got caught by an adult. Poe walked up to her and then knelt down. Are you all right, little one? Poe said. No, I did a bad thing, she said. What did you do? I was mad, and the little girl looked at Papa Legba. Poe followed her gaze to see Papa Legba with a stern look on his face. Go on, girl, he said. You have to fess up, or things are going to get even worse. The little girl swallowed hard. I'm sorry I helped to hurt your people. She shuffled her feet. I was mad that the people who came to our planet hurt my siblings. So me and the traditionalists, see, we did the bad things to your people. Papa says we hurt way more of your people than you hurt ours. I'm sorry. Poe stood up and stepped back a few paces. I thought I was meeting spirits here. You really are the aliens? There's an Earthman who said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, Papa Legba said. Does it matter if we're spirits or aliens if my DNA is in you? I don't understand. There's a part of me that lived and still lives on Earth, because at one time my people explored the galaxy and I found Earth. I was the last to return home before the Great Sleep, but a part of me remained on the planet I had grown to love. Some philosophers would say that all beings have a spirit, and so mine is in every living thing that comes from Earth, including you. Poe didn't know what to think about that, or what they should say to the little girl. They sat on the ground and thought for a time. Papa Legba, nor the little girl, moved. Finally, Poe said, I'm sorry that humans killed your siblings. They didn't know what you were and couldn't hear you. I'm glad you apologized, and it will take time for us to trust each other. But you can't hurt other stations, or we will just keep hurting each other. Papa, the little girl said, we have to stop our sibling. We will, child, we will. Go on now. It's time for you to go. The little girl nodded, waved goodbye to Poe, and started skipping back down the road. You met me now, so I will tell you something. You will need to come to the ship when it arrives. We will meet you there, and I will have something for you. Tell Jack not to stand in Marsh's way. What does that mean? Poe asked. You know that's not how this works, child. Go and rest, you'll need it. The gray mist swirled around them into darkness. I opened my eyes. The ceiling was above me, and as my awareness returned, I realized I was lying on the floor of the chapel. There was a cushion under my head, and I could hear Marcia chanting on the cushion next to me. I sat up and looked around. Somehow the room seemed much brighter than it had been. Marcia stopped chanting once she realized I was sitting up. Thank you, Papa Legba, for opening the way for Poe. I repeated the thanks after her, and the room became darker, as if Loki had dimmed the lights. I looked at the altar to see that the candles had burned down to about half of what they had been. Marcia reached next to her for a small bowl. I consecrate you with the water that gives us life. She dipped her finger in the water and drew a symbol on my forehead. She put the bowl down and picked up another. I anoint you with oil, which has been the sacred rite of priests since ancient times. She again dipped her finger in the bowl and drew something in oil on my forehead. After putting the second bowl down, she put her hands on my head and said, I will all my power into you so that you may do the work that is needed. In a few breaths, I felt all the hair on my body stand on end. I could feel something flow into me, so I held absolutely still. Part of my mind thought, this is much more than the books described. I wasn't sure how long Marcia kept her hands on my head, but after some time she pulled her hands away, almost as if it burned, and was breathing hard, as if she had been running. I felt as if I wanted to run around the room or through Loki's corridors, or if I could, levitate off the ground. I smiled and turned to Marcia. Marcia was leaning her elbows on her knees and really looked old, even though I knew she wasn't that old. Marcia, are you okay? I asked. It's been a long time since I've done an initiation, Poe. But you look, well, old, I said. She smiled. I've been through almost 3 lifetimes worth of experiences, 2 of those in the last couple of years, Poe. It has taken its toll. I got up and retrieved the food and drink we had set aside earlier, chocolate cake and juice. There was only 1 cup. Marcia took a bit of the cake, then handed the plate to me. May you never hunger. I ate the piece she gave me, then did the same for her. Then she lifted the cup and said, May you never thirst. She handed it to me and I drank, then did the same ritual for her. Marcia pulled off another piece of cake for herself and ate it, licking the frosting off her fingers. I laughed and did the same. So, Marcia said, how do you feel, priest? I feel so much. I feel like I could run around this room or fly or, I don't know. She chuckled. I remember feeling like that too after my initiation. That's why we eat something after the ritual, or we never get to sleep. Sleep? I don't know if I could. Don't worry, you will. Especially if you ask Loki for a protein shake once you get back to your room. It also wouldn't hurt for you to ground and center when you do that either. We'll have a lot to do tomorrow. I nodded. I saw him. Papa Legba. She nodded. And a little girl. She apologized to me. I think she was one of the aliens. Marcia's eyes opened wide. Really? Are the aliens actually our spirits? Papa Legba said he'd been on Earth a long time. Marcia looked thoughtful. I don't know, Poe. Not for sure. Part of me wonders if it really matters or not. I mean, if it's an alien or if it's a god, what does it matter if they both can guide us to do what we need to do? I didn't know what to say to that, since it was almost exactly what Papa Legba had said. Instead, I said, Marcia, you should go to bed. You look exhausted. I can clean up here. Thanks, Poe. I think you're right. You should leave the altar as it is and take care of it in the morning. Let the candles burn out. Okay. You should have a protein drink, too. I will, she said. She got off the floor slowly and started walking towards the door. Marcia, did you also see him tonight? I asked quickly. She stopped and turned. Yes, I did, she said, then turned around again and kept walking. Good night, Poe. Good night, I said, and somehow the fact that she had seen him too wasn't a comfort. It filled me with worry. Chapter 36. Jack. Jack, we've arrived, Loki said. I nodded, stretched, and opened my eyes. Good. How's Carver? I got up out of bed, got dressed, and took care of other necessities while we talked. He's pretty much the same as when we left, but he's talking to Frida now. Well, that's progress, since he barely talked to us when we were here last. I dialed in a nutrition shake from the printer and took it over to the couch. Loki had positioned himself so that I could see the other two stations from the windows. Both stations had vines covering them, but only one of them was still rotating. What else can we do for him, Loki? I'm not sure, Jack. It depends on what he wants to do. I gave him the jump drive specifications, like I did with Frida. We'll have to wait. I nodded again. Are Poe and Marcia up yet? Yes, Jack. They both have just woken up. I had an idea. Tell them that if they want, they can come here for breakfast. They had a pretty intense night of it, from what Marcia explained to me, and Poe hasn't seen the view from here yet. What do you think? I think that's a wonderful idea. What should I make for them? Let's make it a big spread, since I'll be eating most of it anyway. I took a drink of my shake. I have a feeling that this constant need for food isn't really going to go away, is it? Probably not, as the bots are completely throughout your body now, including all your major organs, and require energy. If we ever go back to Survey again, I could ask Lucifer about it, or even Sun Tzu, since Sunny has operatives that rely on bots for disguise and espionage, Loki replied. Really? That's like something out of a novel. Yes, but outside of that use case, it's not done often. That makes sense, considering the side effect of having to practically eat your own body weight in a day. And I'm guessing I've got way more bots than they would use for that, right? Yes. I downed the last of the shake. That was an interesting shake, Loki. What was that? It was one from Sun Tzu, Thai peanut curry. Huh. Put that in the regular rotation. I like it. The wall near the food printer erupted in flowers and smiley faces. I smiled as we set about printing breakfast. Marcia was sipping her coffee as Poe and I finished eating. Marcia looked more tired than usual, and if I didn't know any better, I'd say Poe was hungover. When I asked about it, Marcia said, doing that kind of magical working can give you the equivalent of a hangover, especially if you forget to have extra nutrition and water before you go to bed. Poe looked a little sheepish. Yeah, okay, I forgot. But that was because I was so tired by the time I got back to my room I could barely keep my eyes open. Told you, Marcia teased. Poe stuck their tongue out at her. That reminds me, Marcia continued. Jack, have you heard from the Morgan at all recently? I searched my memory for a moment. No, not since I touched Loki's core. Huh, interesting, she said. I wonder. Poe looked up from their plate. Oh yeah, I had a message about that for you, Jack, from Lazarus. He said, tell her partner that he can't be reached anymore, particularly not by the aliens. They paused. I'm sorry, I forgot all about it. They did say you were special, though. Loki, who had raised the screen in front of the couches where we were sitting, looked thoughtful for a moment, then said, that might be because of the enhancements. They are an extension of my programming, which is high-level quantum computing. The bots also run on that level and have special code to deal with quantum effects that could interfere with computing, or to filter out quantum-level noise, which would include quantum decoherence. Marcia nodded. Right, that would make sense why the captains took longer to succumb to the vines than the others, she said. It was then I remembered what the Morgan had said to me when I initially got the enhancements. Damn, the Morgan told me when I first got these enhancements that she wouldn't be able to talk to me as much. Now I know why. Do you miss it? Asked Loki, with a little worry in his voice. I do and I don't. She always had good insights, but it was more reminding me of what I already knew. I am grateful for her helping me when I got the enhancements, I said out loud. And she was the one that created the room in my mind for us, but it seems like once she helped me figure it out, I was able to do it myself, I said privately. I don't know why I didn't talk about the room in my mind with the others, but that seemed like a private thing between me and Loki. It's so weird when he does that, said Poe. You get used to it, said Marcia. I grimaced. Hey, you have spirits, aliens, whatever, I have Loki. Marcia laughed. Point taken. When she got her breath back, she asked, Loki, how's Carver doing? He's been talking to Frida and figuring out what he wants to do. The plan is that I will build him a demon to reside in, while he repurposes the rest of the station to make himself a ship. I think he wants to travel for a while. Marcia gave a sad smile. I could feel Loki's understanding as well. I sent Loki wordless love through our connection, and he sent love and gratitude back. I could also see the demon he was reconfiguring for Carver. I can't blame him for not wanting to be here anymore, I said. It's hard living in a place where people you cared about died. Marcia nodded. Poe had a faraway look on their face. Marcia watched them closely, as if waiting for something. Then I saw it. I had made the same face when thinking about my first pre-call mission and being on the scaper. We both waited for a few minutes, then Marcia reached out a hand and gently touched them on the shoulder. They jumped, but came back to the present. Where were you, Poe? Their eyes were wide enough that I could see the whites around their irises, and they started talking fast. My Mama Jay, she killed them all. My whole family. I didn't see her kill them, but I went back one day to find out what happened to them. I had to know. Her spirit came to me, and I could see where she hung my daddy Shen by his nails in the wall, then put my brother and mom's bodies in a sculpture. The day I ran from them, she had killed my papa. They all killed each other. There were tears flowing freely down their cheeks. Why am I crying? I thought I was done crying for them. Marcia moved faster than I did and enveloped Poe in a hug. I came around the other side and held them both. Loki watched from his screen, but I knew that if he had had a body, he'd have been with us. You just don't get over something like that, Poe, I said, as they sobbed into Marcia's shirt. Jack's right, Poe, she said. We haven't been through exactly what you've been through, Poe, but all of us understand what you're going through. We've all been through horrible things and survived it. It's okay to be sad, angry, and hurt about it all. It's called post-traumatic stress. We've all been through it, even Loki. It doesn't go away, but it becomes manageable over time. Poe nodded, still crying. We all held each other until well after their tears stopped. Poe? Marcia said quietly. The only response was a steady breathing. They fell asleep, she whispered. I pulled myself out of the hug pile, picked up Poe, and gently laid them on the couch. Marcia grabbed the blanket and put it over them. Marcia and I stood and watched them. They remind me a lot of Jenny, she said. Yeah, they do. Sighing, she said, I wish we had more time with Jenny after everything had happened. We'll see her again. There's nothing saying we can't go back to Survey and visit after this. Yeah, she said. The way she said it sounded like she didn't believe we'd go back. I looked at her for a moment. There was something in her expression that I couldn't quite read. I noticed she looked older. I was about to say something when Loki interrupted my thoughts. Carver's demon is ready, he said quietly. I realized he had put down the screen so that there was an unobstructed view. One of the larger demons had come into range, but instead of a rectangular box, it looked like a large sphere with half a demon attached to it. I put my hand over my mouth to try and not laugh out loud. Why is the demon funny, Jack? Asked Loki privately. Well, it, looks like either a weird version of an old Earth RV, or, it looks kind of like a weird penis. I blushed to think of it and sent Loki A wordless apology. Sometimes humans revert to childlike humor, I quickly added. I don't think I really understand, said Loki. Human preteen children tend to think that body parts and bodily functions are hilarious and will laugh and giggle at anything that reminds them of that kind of bodily humor. Humans generally don't completely lose that when they become adults. Oh, I see, he said. Out loud he said, Carver has successfully transferred to the demon. He is now reprogramming the matter of the station into component material. Marcia turned to me. Do you mind if I stay for a while? I shook my head. Help me clear breakfast? Sure. What were you and Loki just talking about? She asked. 12-year-old humor, I replied. Marcia grinned and brought some plates to the recycler. Yeah, I thought the same thing about the demon. You could always chalk that up to weird human things, Loki. Humans do a lot of strange things, Loki said. Oh, most definitely, I said. I looked towards Poe on the couch. Boy, are they a sound sleeper. I need to set my vocal volume very loud when they ask for me to wake them up, Loki commented. Well, it seems they do have normal teenager traits after all, said Marcia. Good, I said as I turned toward the windows. Suddenly, Carver Station seemed to melt inside the net of vines, and the matter formed into a large ball of metal outside the vines. Wow. Marcia came back to the windows. I was right. The vine skeleton is incredible. What do we do with it, though? I'm dispatching another demon to tow it towards the system. The aliens can do with it what they will, or it will just go directly into their sun. Loki replied with a hint of anger. I couldn't blame him. We watched as the demon approached, hooked onto the vine skeleton, and started moving away. When it was out of sight of the windows, we could see the ball of metal starting to reform into different components of a ship. It was mesmerizing to watch how fast it was going. Jack, Marcia, a picket has come from Ares Station. Isn't that one of the ones we've heard from already? Marcia asked. Yes, they had not been contacted by the aliens when we initially sent our pickets. It appears, though, that there is now a seed ship outside the station. Odd. Poe said that they had apologized for what they did unless... She had a faraway look on her face. Shit, Jack, remember what I told you about when I was connected to the vines at Alpha? That there was one faction of the aliens that wasn't happy about our presence, the one that tried to kill me? You think that alien faction is at Ares? It would make sense. We have to go to them, said Loki. Frida will stay here with Carver while he rebuilds. I nodded. Right, let's go. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.